A Wall Street bank that once gobbled up U.S. treasuries like popcorn at a premiere just hit pause and then flipped the script entirely. Not quietly, not subtly. They reduced their treasury exposure by billions. And the message? Loud and messy. They don't trust the U.S. debt market anymore. Now ask yourself, what does it mean when the very institutions meant to hold the financial backbone of the country start walking away? Let's break this down. No assumptions. No comfort zones. Just the facts and the fallout. Because if banks are no longer buying treasuries, who will? Stick around. Because this move could be the first domino in a much darker game Washington can't afford to lose. Citadel Securities slashed its holdings of long-duration treasuries by billions, citing increasingly asymmetric risk in duration-heavy U.S. debt, according to internal sources quoted by Bloomberg. This wasn't a fringe hedge fund making a speculative bet. This was one of the most sophisticated liquidity providers on Wall Street, publicly signaling that U.S. government debt, once considered untouchable, now carries structural uncertainty. But why now? The answer may lie in the bond market's recent dislocations. Despite 10-year yields climbing above 4.95%, the highest since 2007, primary dealers are struggling to offload inventory. According to the New York Fed's March data, dealer balance sheets are now carrying $340 billion in treasuries, the highest since the 2020 pandemic panic. The fact that yields are rising while demand stalls is not a paradox. It's a warning. And what Wall Street just told Washington without saying a word is this: you're on your own now, but if one bank bails, what happens when they all do? In March, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent unveiled a regulatory proposal aimed at easing Basel III capital constraints for banks holding treasuries, claiming it would improve liquidity and stimulate domestic credit expansion. But former Fed Governor Daniel Tarullo immediately raised red flags, warning in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that this move would offload sovereign debt risk onto the banking system, not solve it. The mechanics are subtle but consequential. By loosening leverage ratio rules, banks could carry more treasuries without holding proportionate capital buffers. In effect, this incentivizes them to absorb more government debt without increasing their financial resilience. Moody's, in a recent downgrade watch, noted this could blur the line between market making and fiscal backstopping. If that sounds like moral hazard, there's a reason. Historically, when risk is underpriced and distributed via opaque balance sheet accounting, the blowback doesn't stay theoretical for long. Just ask 2008. And yet, the bigger contradiction remains: why deregulate to increase demand for a supposedly risk-free asset? It's the kind of yield that used to make institutional investors salivate. Yet today, major U.S. banks are retreating from the very asset that built their foundations. As of Q1 2025, JPMorgan has reduced its treasury exposure by 11%, Bank of America by 8%, and Wells Fargo by 10%, according to 13F filings. Why? Jamie Dimon offered a rare moment of candor during his April 2025 shareholder letter. We believe the forward inflation curve is mispriced, and the Fed will likely retighten. Translation: even at 5%, these yields aren't safe. In fact, they might be value traps. The core CPI rose 0.6% in March, beating expectations for the third month straight. That puts annualized inflation at 4.2%, above the Fed's 2% target and climbing. Combine that with mounting fiscal deficits, projected at $1.8 trillion for FY 2025, and suddenly treasuries look less like a safe harbor and more like a slow bleed. But if domestic banks won't take the risk and foreign buyers are walking, who does that leave? China and Japan are no longer passive participants in America's debt machine. They're becoming reluctant lenders. China's treasury holdings fell to $767 billion in February 2025, down from $859 billion just a year ago, per U.S. Treasury data. That's the lowest level since 2009. Japan's Ministry of Finance confirmed in April that it sold $21.4 billion in treasuries to support the yen, pushing its total holdings down to $1.03 trillion, their lowest in a decade. But this is about more than Forex defense. A leaked policy draft from China's State Administration of Foreign Exchange, first reported by Reuters, suggests Beijing is now actively reallocating its reserves toward non-US strategic commodities and bilateral settlement instruments. That's not portfolio diversification. That's currency hedging against a collapsing trust model. The consequence? A structural buyer is leaving the room, and if $1.8 trillion in foreign demand starts decaying into trickles of liquidation, the next auction could turn into an international credibility test. And the fallback plan? It's already been tested once. But can it be used again without setting fire to the dollar? On April 4th, minutes from the Federal Open Market Committee revealed that several participants discussed the need for balance sheet flexibility if Treasury demand continues to weaken. Translation, QE is on the table, but this time, the circumstances are radically different from 2020. Then the Fed was injecting liquidity into a deflationary crisis. Now it's staring down inflation that won't stay in the cage. The Fed's balance sheet, currently at $7.8 trillion, remains well above pre-pandemic levels. And adding more treasuries could push it over $9 trillion by year's end if auctions begin to fail. According to Zoltan Pozar, former Credit Suisse strategist, reintroducing QE in an inflationary environment is like pouring gasoline on a slow fire. And markets agree. Gold surged 6% in April, topping $2,380 per ounce, while the DXY dollar index slipped below 101. If QE restarts under these conditions, it may not be seen as a rescue. It could be interpreted as capitulation. But what happens if investors start treating the US dollar like an emerging market currency? President Trump's 2025 tariff expansion, covering over $88 billion worth of Chinese EVs, rare earths, and chip-making equipment, was designed to reassert US leverage. But according to Bloomberg Economics, it may be creating an unintended funding crisis. After the tariffs were announced in March, China retaliated with a 34% duty on U.S. goods and began offloading treasuries at the fastest rate since 2018, selling $43.6 billion between February and April. Meanwhile, data from the U.S. Census Bureau shows a sharp decline in bilateral trade. U.S. exports to China dropped 29% year over year in Q1. This collapse in trade volume directly reduces dollar inflows that previously helped finance U.S. deficits. Instead of isolating China, Trump's policies may be isolating U.S. debt from global buyers. Mohamed El-Erian warned on CNBC that weaponizing trade is triggering de-dollarization behaviors much faster than U.S. policymakers anticipated. So while the tariffs may win political points at home, they appear to be accelerating the very decoupling America can't afford. But if foreign buyers vanish, can the U.S. really fund itself from the inside out? Gold has surged 22% since January, hitting $2,380 per ounce in mid-April, driven not by fear, but by central bank behavior. According to the World Gold Council, net official gold purchases reached 290 metric tons in the first quarter, up 45% year over year, with China, Singapore, and Poland leading the charge. What's changed? The buyers aren't responding to short-term volatility. They're actively replacing dollar reserves. In a March note, Goldman Sachs called this a strategic reserve rotation, not just a hedge. The shift is clear. While U.S. Treasuries yield 4.9%, their real return, adjusted for March CPI at 4.2%, is razor thin. Meanwhile, gold, which yields nothing, is now considered more reliable because it doesn't depend on congressional debt ceilings or central bank credibility. Former BIS advisor William White told Reuters, "The system is reverting to assets that don't carry political risk. Gold's rally isn't speculative, it's structural. The question now isn't whether it competes with treasuries, but whether it replaces them as the default global reserve." But if gold is rising because trust is falling, what's the next domino? Bridgewater founder Ray Dalio, whose economic models track long-term debt cycles over centuries, warned again in April that the U.S. is entering Stage 5, the final phase before domestic restructuring. In his latest report, he noted that total public debt is now over 124% of GDP, And debt service costs alone are projected to reach $1.12 trillion in 2025, surpassing defense spending for the first time in modern history. According to the CBO, interest payments will consume 18% of federal revenue by 2026, up from just 9% a decade ago. Historically, Dalio argues, this combination of high debt, falling real yields, and social polarization often precedes regime-level change. While critics point out that the U.S. still enjoys reserve currency privileges, Dalio counters that reserve status does not prevent decline. It delays recognition. The question isn't whether a reset is possible, but whether it's already begun and remains unacknowledged. If America can't roll over its debt at affordable rates, will it resort to inflating it away? And if inflation becomes the only exit, what happens to everyone holding the bag? As foreign participation in Treasury auctions falls, China now holds just 3.1% of U.S. debt. Down from 7.5% in 2011, the burden is shifting inward. Domestic banks, pension funds, and even the Fed are absorbing the gap. According to the New York Fed, U.S. financial institutions now hold $4.6 trillion in treasuries. And that figure is set to exceed $6 trillion by early 2026 if current buying trends persist. But this creates a circular trap. Banks load up on treasuries to meet regulatory requirements, but rising rates devalue their portfolios. Silicon Valley Bank's collapse in 2023 was an early symptom, caused by a $15 billion unrealized loss on bonds they couldn't sell fast enough. Now scale that risk across the system. A sharp spike in yields could force mark-to-market losses large enough to trigger liquidity crises. JPMorgan's April risk disclosure warned that a systemic repricing of sovereign debt could impair capital buffers. If banks become the last buyers and the first casualties, the entire funding mechanism begins to cannibalize itself. So what if the next treasury buyer isn't a country or a bank or even human? And this is where it gets even more unsettling. Because if Washington can't convince foreign governments to fund its debt, and domestic banks are nearing their exposure limits, then the next phase won't be financial, it'll be structural. Quietly, hedge funds like BlackRock and algorithmic traders from Citadel to Two Sigma are already testing tokenized debt instruments, programmable money, and smart contract-based bond settlements. These aren't experiments, they're contingencies. A system where AI-driven liquidity pools, not nations, dictate what U.S. debt is worth in real time. No loyalty, no diplomacy, no lifelines. So ask yourself, what happens when the U.S. government no longer sets the terms of its own credit? Because, this time, the sell-off isn't just a signal. It might be the end of permissioned finance as we know it. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.